When there's trouble, our guest today, he shows up. Time magazine calls him a predatory spokesman. We are going to find out how and why right now. Welcome, Paul Peterson, founder and president of A Minor Consideration. Let's talk.
Let's talk, Rochelle. How are you?
I'm doing just great. Thank
I'm
you.
so pleased to be here.
Thank you for being here. You know, Paul, I am so proud of all of your work. I mean, your card says actor, author, advocate, but
Yes.
you know, I'm most proud of your advocacy work, and I know that you've done a great amount of work with kid actors.
Well, that's
and
where
with
it
seniors.
began.
Yes.
The
Tell
seniors,
me
you're
about it.
responsible.
Well, let's talk first about the kid actors.
Okay.
Okay.
You know, your heart sometimes, when it knows it's right, you get led into paths that you didn't know existed before. And when I started working with the former kid stars, there was a very narrow group of people. And I remember telling my wife, Rana, well, maybe we'll help 3 or 4 kids a year. And we started the foundation in January of 1990. And suddenly it was 60 people, it was 600 people, it was the kids who were members of Screen Actors Guild or AFTRA. And a light bulb went off in my mind when I realized this wasn't about kid actors, this was about working children. And working children, and there are 5.5 million of them in this country. We're not talking just show business now.
Wow.
We're talking kids who pick our crops, kids who deliver newspapers. They're engaged in all sorts of activities, and they're not very well protected. Many are actually exempt, as kid actors are, from federal child labor laws. Well, once I sunk my teeth into this, and with the help of some other former kid stars, we really did get the ball rolling, and we've been able to make, I'm knocking on wood, some significant changes.
And is that how you got your reputation as a predatory spokesman? Are you looking for trouble?
No, trouble finds me. It has been a feature of Minor Consideration, which is the name of the foundation, that we always have a poster child. If you look around in the news cycle, there is almost always a kid actor or a former kid star in trouble somewhere. The difference now is when someone is in trouble, we show up. We literally, uninvited sometimes, will come knocking on the door, say, what's up? How
Okay.
can we help?
Tell us about one of your most recent cases where I know you were on CNN, you did a lot of work. Tell us one of the most dramatic lately.
We had a young lady in a very famous family show, and reports began to filter in about a very abusive parent-child relationship. And on a long-running series, that can be deadly on a set. And it was so bad that we actually had to go to court to get the custody of the child switched to a much older sister who had herself been victimized by this mother. It's going to take a long time to repair this family relationship, and that is our eventual goal. But in the meantime, this 15-year-old did not deserve to be treated the way she was.
And your help through A Minor Consideration has got them on track?
I think so. The biggest help we provide is to be able to look at youngsters, no matter their condition, and say, you are not the first. We have been down this road. As I've told you before, Rochelle, of the 600 kid stars who are members of A Minor Consideration, the core group, we are all in Trivial Pursuit.
Absolutely. Well, Paul, you know, I've known you for years, and I do
Yes.
know that you were fired from the Mickey Mouse Club.
That's right. I
So-
am the world's first ex-Mouseketeer.
Okay, what did you do that was behavior unbecoming a Mouseketeer?
Everything. I had no idea. It was my first job. And even though I was, working for Walt Disney and at the Mouse House over there in Burbank, it was wonderful, but I didn't have the discipline. Young performers, at the end of the day, have to be every bit as professional as their adult counterparts. You must be on time. You cannot wander away. You can't go tearing your wardrobe up because you're climbing up ladders and stuff. I did all of that. And the final day came after a long and checkered history. A guy continued to call me Mouse. I was very small when I was on the show. And he called me Mouse one day by surprise, and I punched him in the stomach and said, "Don't call me that, fatso." And standing behind Lee Travers, the casting director, was Walt Disney. So I was that afternoon discharged.
Oops.
Well, You know, oops, I knew I deserved it, and frankly, I wasn't very happy being part of a chorus. I'm not a chorus type person. I'd like to think that I stand out, and I like to stand out. And by the time I was discharged, I had a theatrical agent and was going on interviews. And by the time the Mickey Mouse Club premiered in late September of '55, I had already booked a couple of national commercials. So I found that rhythm. I love to go on interviews, and my long-suffering mother, she was really funny. You know, Mom, why would you drag me all over Hollywood trying to get, these little jobs? She said, what was I going to do with you?
You were a handful, no doubt.
Well, I was, and the only way to burn off energy was either sports or dancing or performing. I hated the practice, but I loved the applause. Some kids are just born to it. Gary Coleman, I used to talk about this. Gary Coleman was in a hurry because he was very sick, as you know, and no kidneys. And he wanted to make his mark right away. And he actually pushed his parents into getting him in that first commercial in Chicago. Bobby Darin, with whom I was friends, had a very severe genetic heart condition, and he was in a hurry. And what some people took as aggression was just because he knew.
Right.
He knew.
So, from conflict
Yes.
come great things.
Well,
As a result of being fired from the Mickey Mouse Club, what great things came from that?
Well, once I got a reputation as a pretty proficient kid actor, the parts started to get bigger. Playhouse 90s with Michael Rennie and James Mason, and then a real big movie with Cary Grant and Sophia Loren, people remember fondly, called Houseboat, which exposed me for 7 months to the wonder of Cary Grant, who was a consummate professional, who shared his skills. I remember him teaching me how to do double takes, because he was a master. And then once you have that reputation and a good juicy part comes up, like the son on the Donna Reed show, it was a part that I wanted to play. Shelley Fabre, as my sister, was great. We had our act down, but who knew it was going to last 8 years? That
run.
absolutely changed my life completely. And when you spend every Thursday night growing up in people's living room from age 12 to 20, it breeds the kind of familiarity that, frankly, looking back and talking about my advocacy, is very useful.
Absolutely.
I don't care if the president calls me Jeff Stone. I don't care if governors ask me how was Donna Reed to work. I'm in the office, and that's the key.
That is the key. And didn't you write a book as a result?
Well, I did. One of my books, my 10th book, in fact, was an affectionate look at the experience of being a Mouseketeer, both the set and setting, because it was a critical show for Walt Disney. In that year, he bet everything on Disneyland. There was a world before Disneyland, and he had it all on the line, and we were a component in the Disney machine. And he always had a special fondness because we were an instant sounding board for his ideas, all of the Mouseketeers. And the nice part is that we remained friends throughout. But in writing that book, I discovered threads of commonality in the experience of being a young performer who is, well, in the end, you're thrown on the scrap heap. When they're done with you, they're done. And nobody is there to pick up the pieces if you have shattered.
And as your role, I know from that, I'm sure those experiences have helped you so much with the AFTRA and SAG-AFTRA. I know it's a new name.
Yes, that's
on the board.
The union is now, the union is one union. The AFTRA, which came into existence as a radio union, is now merged with Screen Actors Guild. So there's 140-odd thousand performers who belong to this, and of course equity. But it helped in my board work because I really have, despite my young years, I've had a lot of experience running businesses and dealing, as I say to people, the difference between our group and so many other helping groups is we actually get our hands bloody. We show up. And some of the problems we have to deal with may range from addiction problems, much in the news, housing issues, psychological issues. But we just jump in there because each of us, I think, understands. But for the grace of God, it could be us. I ache when I see a Lindsay Lohan in the news. It hurts me. I don't like to see a young man like Justin Bieber rake through the coals because he behaves like a 19-year-old, which is what he is. So it has been the most rewarding experience until I got to the senior issues. And that's when all of these years of practice and access and some success really started to pay off.
So if you could say one thing to kid actors, what would it be? One thing,
one thing. Well, when you arrive at your majority age, 18, it's time to stop. Go to school. You keep telling America you're working to go to college, so by God, go to college. Take a break. Find out who you are. See where you fit. The establishment of the pecking order is a critical component in character development. It's critical.
Great. We've learned how Paul has helped working kids. We'll find out next about his advocacy for older adults. Please stay tuned to Let's Talk.
Even if a signal indicates it's safe to walk, it's never safe unless drivers see you. Last year, 113 pedestrians were injured in Santa Monica. You don't have to go to extremes to get a driver's attention. It just takes a little eye contact. Take the right steps to be safe. Watch the road.
I picked him up at a UCLA public hearing on aging in the environment. Our guest today is Paul Peterson. So Paul, what happened after I picked you up?
Well, you are responsible for this latest phase, Rochelle. You know, it's a great story. After I made my remarks about the environmental impact of being in a closed room and not being free to air it out and get out, when you came over to me and talked to me about hosting Aging Well in LA for the city of Los Angeles, I was at that time surrounded by elderly women. My wife's mother, so my mother-in-law, my own mom, Auntie Ruth, and an elderly aunt, Lillian, and her old daughter. So in the 2 months that came between when we first met and I hosted that first batch of shows, I became a client of the Department of Aging because these independent women, and they were all independent when I met you, suddenly had needs that I needed guidance and support. I mean, ordinarily, I'm pretty good about interfacing with governments and I'm not afraid to talk to doctors or institutions. But this one had me buffaloed, and I was so grateful for the support that the Department of Aging gave me because I was getting informed all the time. And like many people my age, and I'll be 68 this year, I was in that sandwich with elderly parents that I had to be concerned about and their housing needs and health issues, and then kids at that time still in college. You know, my oldest son was still going to grad school, and daughter too, for that matter. Well, she was in the Navy, but then grad school. So learning about the senior issues was a very steep learning curve because there were more issues than I had any idea of.
And many of those issues you had to learn about because you were caring for 5 people over the age of, what, 80? Or?
All of them over 80. They have, sad to say, all subsequently passed away. But one of the issues that we've talked about before, my wife and I were the local kids. So, and she's a nurse, Rana's a nurse, so we sort of, almost by default, became the constant caregivers. And you know, I worked out of the house, so for me it was no big deal to run over to Auntie Ruth's or to drive out to Riverside to see my mom, until all 5 of them became dependent. And when Rana's mother started to suffer from her cancer, then it became even more of a challenge because she wanted to live independently. Rochelle, I didn't even know there was such a thing as non-medical in-home care. I had no idea. I didn't realize the number of programs that adults can access if they would only ask for help. And I became keenly aware that when you're a caregiver, you better get informed. It is time for you to learn what's coming, what you need to do to prepare, and to speak to professionals. I've told this story often in the boardroom at the theatrical unions. I would have well-known people who were familiar with the show I was doing come up to me and in whispers say, you know, Paul, I'm taking care of my mother. I'd look at them and say, why is this a secret? We're all going through this. We need to talk about it. Our friends and family need to understand you need a lot of support because it's frightening sometimes. And aging is not all golf courses and unlimited travel. There are infirmities. There are health issues. There are estates to plan and to make sure that your wishes are carried out. So it's incumbent not just on the senior, but for the family members and caregivers to provide that guidance, the lights on the pathway.
To give them help, to
Yes.
do that, and to provide the guidance. But in your case, you actually were appointed on a national level. You took your advocacy to
Well,
the United States government. Didn't they ask you to become
They
part
did.
of the
Well,
White House
Yeah,
conference?
because I was starting to get pretty angry about this. Learning from you how big this cohort was and how it was explosively growing, I kept saying, where's all the information about seniors in the press? Where's the media on this? And I invited myself through Dorcas Hardy, who is then running the White House Conference on Aging. I invited myself to the party in D.C. And when I got there, I discovered the most astonishing thing. I was the only member of the media present, the only one. How do you get your story out in this modern age if you don't have access, not just to television media, but to print and now the social media? You got to get out there.
Yeah, there's a lot of denial. I mean, we see that in government, but we also see it. People are denying their own aging. So
Well,
we need to talk about it. We need to inform everyone about it. And
But
how
you-
do you do that in your
Well,
role?
first, I listen to experts. You know, I have one of the most heartening things, seriously, in this past 8 years, has been coming to know people who early in their lives, I'm talking in their 20s, in college, making a decision to make senior issues, gerontology if it's medicine, their life's work. The nutritionist that I deal with at the Department of Aging, she's been there forever. The woman serves 3 million meals every year. 3 million. Now, obviously, she doesn't bring them herself, but between Meals on Wheels and providing food, nutrition is critically important at our senior centers. Somebody has to do the work.
And it's only growing.
Well, it's going to double. How about that? Double.
It's going to double, and is there going to be enough money? I mean, that's something that
Well,
has to be considered.
that's where us older guys and gals have got to start being creative and bring our experience to bear on this problem. There are lots of solutions that are being proposed now, which we need to push forward into the public consciousness. It costs less to keep a person in their home.